Hello to everybody around the world watching this video. If you're watching from Europe, or you're watching from the States, Australia, New Zealand, or if you're watching this video from Africa. My name is Owen Francis from South African Welding Education. I'm from an engineering field that specializes in the fabrication and installation of tanks, structures, pressure piping, as well as pressure vessels. I'd like to talk to you this morning about Data Pack Compilation and Review. This is a training course that we've released in 2015 that focuses specifically on all the codes and standards that govern fabrication and installation of vessels, tanks, structures, piping in a petrol environment, a petrochem environment, and even in power stations. Anything that's been fabricated has got to be fabricated to a certain code or standard. All the information for the fabrication is gathered and compiled in a data pack. A little bit about South African Welding Education. South African Welding Education was established in 2013, where we took information relevant to the contract and exposed it to artisans working on the floor, enabling them to deliver exactly what is required of them in terms of their fabrication of whatever we were fabricating, be it tanks or vessels. We gave them all the information that the contract required so that they were able to do their work effectively. Most times guys come onto the site with experience, and experience is good, but some contracts require British standards and some contracts require American standards, and some contracts are the client's specifications more stricter than the code, and some contracts the client's specifications are exactly identical to the code. But if you know exactly what the requirements are in terms of your welding, your boiler making, your pipe fitting, then you're able to develop and you're able to deliver exactly what the contract requires. But take away the information, then you start making silly mistakes. Silly mistakes compile after a whole lot of tons and tons and tons of silly mistakes, result in third party rejecting all the items that you fabricated. And repairing something takes 5 times longer than if you do it right the first time. And that's how South African Welding Education was birthed. Once we were able to influence people and educate people concerning their contract and what is required from welders and boiler makers, we then established a welding school which is still active in Durban today. We're at number 3 Horseshoe Road, where we train learners how to weld according to the code, according to the contracts, as well as practical execution for welding. Pardon me. Your data pack compilation. What is a data pack, you ask me? There's no petrol industry or no power station in Africa that can have an item fabricated and installed on their site without it having a data pack to go with it. A data pack is all your quality control and all your quality assurance requirements compiled in one file. And that's what a data pack is. I came into the field many years ago. I served time as a welder, so I've got a sound welding experience. I served time as a pipe fitter. I did a little bit of boiler making as well, where I further moved on to pursue a career in quality assurance. I speak to you as a qualified welding inspector. The welding inspection courses that most of us go on are excellent courses, and they focus on a lot of the stuff that's intricate and important for us as a welding inspector. But data packs aren't part of the training. And once you come to an interview, you'll notice that most of the interview questions are data pack based. Why is that? Because contractors and companies want somebody who has the information that's required for them to make their money at the end of the day. No company will get paid unless their data pack is approved. No company will get paid unless their data pack is signed off completely with all the standards met. So your money, you could say, your money is in your data pack. And that's where it is. But if you haven't been trained in terms of data packs, how do you know how to compile and review a data pack? Most of us learn from experience. We get into sites, and this is not the best way to learn, because most of the time learning from experience comes with a whole lot of boobies and a whole lot of embarrassment, which you can avoid if you train. You can't work on site if you don't have working at heights training. You can't work on a scaffold, pardon me, if you haven't been trained to work on a scaffold. We do working on heights training. You can't work with a grinder. You can't cut with a cutting torch unless you've been trained to work with a grinder, unless you've been trained and qualified to work with a cutting torch. So why is it we don't have training available for quality control inspectors, for welding inspectors to compile and review data packs? A welding inspector spends 20% of his time on site doing his visuals, and he spends 80% of his time compiling his data packs. Even your surveillance don't take as much time as your compiling and reviewing data packs. You spend months on end reviewing data packs, getting approvals, getting things signed off. Your data pack is the most important part of a quality control inspector's job, besides the activities that you carry out every day on site. You can be the best inspector in the world. You can see porosity from a mile or undercut from a mile, but if you can't sell a data pack, you are very little use to a company. That's where the money is, your data packs. Once the certificate of manufacture is signed off, that's when your company officially gets paid, and that's where the money is. And this is a gray area for many welding inspectors, many quality control inspectors, your data pack compilation and review. And this is why South African welding education has taken the initiative to introduce data pack compilation and review training. We're the only company in Africa who offer data pack compilation and review. You can Google data pack compilation and review and see who comes up on your Google search. We're the only guys who come up. We are the only institution that equip people and give people the confidence to work in a quality control environment where data packs are deliverable. And if you're working in a quality control environment, I mean, any experienced welding inspector would know it's a very pressurized environment. Take information away from that. You've got individuals working in pressurized environment with no information. It just makes your job 100 times more difficult than it would be if you know exactly what you're doing. A little bit more about South African welding education. The standards that we've set work around all the standards that are required depending on the industry that we're providing. If we provide training in the petrochem industry, we focus on the American codes, your ASME codes. If you're focusing on a power station, if you're servicing a power station, we focus on British standards, because generally power stations work to, in South Africa at least, your Eskom power stations work to British standards, and the petrochemical industry in South Africa generally works to American standards. So the standards that we set around the course are those that are required by the different industries in South Africa. The objective of our training is to produce competent quality assurance and quality control individuals where data packs are concerned. People who can walk into an office, identify the difference between a piping pack and a structural pack. If you come out of a welding inspection course, whether it be a CSWIP or SAIW, excellent courses. These are excellent courses. But they don't focus on data packs. So you might have all the metallurgical experience in terms of your training, but you walk onto a site, the first thing your QC manager wants to do is compile packs. You get assigned the area, you get assigned the vessel, you get assigned the pipeline, whatever the case may be, and you need to ensure from inception of your pipeline or your structure, or your vessel, whatever it is that you're fabricating, that you put together all the documentation required for that. Now, how do you do this if you're not trained? Like I say, most of us learn from experience. It was a head-bumping experience, and it was unfortunate because most interviews that we went to asked us data pack related questions, and we had no idea what data packs were. In fact, the first time I heard about a data pack was in interview. And if you come from a QC environment, if you serve time as a QC clerk, you've got a better chance if you stepped up to do welding inspection. But if you're coming from the field, if you're a welder looking to come into welding inspection, you're going to have a little bit of a battle, even if you pass your level 1 course. Because quality assurance and quality control implies that you've got to have knowledge of data packs. You've got to have knowledge of data packs if you're going to work in this environment. And we train people to be competent in terms of data packs. We also endeavor to eliminate the backlogs caused by people who aren't experienced with data packs, working with data packs. One of the biggest problems we have on site, and you'd agree with me if you are a quality control specialist or a welding inspector, our fabrication is not a problem. We can fabricate and we can install, that's not an issue. But a lot of the delays that we face where our projects are concerned is in terms of the delivery of our data packs. And sometimes, depending on who the planner is, sometimes the planners don't allocate adequate time for your review of your data packs. That's an activity for your review of your data pack and your final handover. But because we don't have sufficient training in terms of a data pack compilation. There's only a few individuals, very few individuals have adequate experience with data packs. It's not many guys. Many welding inspectors go into the field. You're servicing a power station, for example. A lot of the guys just do your visual inspection, your wall thickness, check your amounts of corrosion, compile all the reports and hand them over. They're not working physically with the data pack. Then you come into an environment where you expected to work physically with your pack from inception, from the approval of your index, right up until your COM is signed. Where do you start? So we have a lot of trouble. We also face trouble with your welders ranges. Your welding procedure is saying that your ranges is one thing. Your welder's qualification is saying that your range is another. The drawings don't match up with what the guy's qualified to weld. So the guy's range on his welder's qualification is saying that his thickness is a maximum 40 millimeters, but the items that we're fabricating are 16 millimeters and nobody picked this up. These are some of the things that we address on data pack compilation review course. These are issues that can delay a project a great deal. We endeavor to eradicate the delays experienced by data packs on site. We also train people to work in EPCM environment, your engineering, procurement, and construction management environment. What is an EPCM, you ask me? I'm happy you did. You got a client who wants an item fabricated, okay? If it's a project, your client will employ an EPCM. Your EPCM is the company that will manage all the subcontractors on site, ensuring that they meet all the deadlines required for the project. That's what basically an EPCM is. We also focus on your packs. What is the difference between your tanks packs, your structural packs, your piping packs, and your vessels packs, and also the different codes that govern your packs. If you're talking tanks, if it's brand new fabrication, your API 650, SAPS 653, API 653. A structural is generally AWS. I'm talking specifically about American codes now. And if you're talking about piping, it'll be your ASME D1. ASME B31.3. If you're talking process piping, if you're talking power piping, it'll be ASME B31.1. And vessels is obviously your ASME 8. And these are some of the codes that we focus on depending on the drawings that we require to review, or the drawings that we require to fabricate. And in our course, we address all these different standards to make students aware of the difference between your different codes. Also the difference between what's the structural data pack, what's the vessels data pack. If you come into the QC office, even if you were successful in getting the job as a welding inspector, and somebody asks you to get a piping data pack, where do you start? You've never seen a piping data pack before. You've just finished your course. And this is what we tend to eliminate. How to get approvals. This is an excellent one. How to get approvals. You get into an interview, I mean, you've got 99% for all your courses, your welding inspection courses, and you come into an interview and they say to you, how do you get approvals? What are approvals? What do you say to the guy? You've never heard, you don't know what he's talking about. You've never heard anybody talking about approvals before. Approvals is not one of the areas that they touch on in your welding inspection courses. So how do you answer the guy? This is what we endeavor to address. How to get approvals, the importance of approvals, how to get approvals for your index, for your QCP, how to get approvals for your design, for your certificate of manufacture. Third-party inspectors want a certain thing. You can't just give him whatever you have on your company templates. He might want to adjust it. You need to get it approved so that when the contract's over, all your documentation is approved. You can sign off everything gradually and easily. These are one of the things that we address. Approvals, very important. You're drawing material maps. How do you do a material map? What is a material map? Your well map. What is a well map? How to review a material map? How to review a well map? Your well traceability, your material traceability, your wellness procedures, your procedure qualification records. How to get approval for your WPSs as well. How to get approval for your wellness qualifications. The difference between your wellness qualification and what the drawing is asking for. Many of times, guys weld out of their ranges, and some welding inspectors who don't have adequate experience in terms of document review aren't able to pick up the thickness on the drawing versus the range that the guy's allowed to weld. And you weld a pipeline, you weld a 24-inch pipeline. The guy's out of range, your welder's out of range by so many millimeters. That can be a serious headache for any quality department, a serious headache. That could prevent your third-party inspector from signing off your job. You don't want that. These are some of the things that we address. The pressure test. What is a pressure test? What is a punch? You get to a job, you're a welding inspector, and your boss says to you, your QC manager says to you, okay, listen, Owen, I need you to go punch this line, I need you to go punch this tank. What is a punch? You're not going to pull out your boxing gloves. The activity of punching, Cat 1 items, Cat 2 items, Cat 3 items, Cat A, B, and C items. What are the difference between your category A and your category C items? These are some of the things that we address on our Dot-to-Pack compilation course. Very important. Your pressure test. How do you execute a pressure test? Where do you start? What do you need to do a pressure test? Your water quality certificate, your calibration of your gauges. These are all the things that we address in a course that aren't addressed in welding inspection courses. A very important part of a welding inspector's job. Hydro test, how to witness a hydro test, how to sign off hold points and a quality control point. What is a hold point and a quality control plan? These are many of the things that we address in the course. How to review your pack, finally. How to review a data pack. You've compiled, you've fabricated an entire vessel, you've fabricated an entire pipeline. You review how to review a data pack to ensure that it's adequate for you to hand over to the client for him to sign off so that he can hand it over to the third party for it to get signed off. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to our Dot-to-Pack compilation review information. I hope it was of assistance to you. You can contact me at owen@sawe.za.com. That's my email address. It's Owen, O-W-E-N, @sawe.za.com, or you can go to our website. It's www.sawe.za.com, and you get all the information that you need concerning our Dot-to-Pack compilation review course. And you can contact me on 081 049 6427. If you're in South Africa, if you're out of South Africa, it'll be +27 81 049 6427. We've also launched a practical quality management course in December. It is amazing. So you're a QC inspector, you've got your level 1, you've got your level 2, you've done your ASME code, you've done your RT interpreters, and now you're ready to move on to be an IPE, perhaps. Or maybe you don't want to go the IPE route. Maybe you would like to be a QC manager. What course can you do? Practical quality management. And once again, this course is exactly everything that you need to walk onto site and execute your job as a QC manager. I'm Owen Francis for South African Welding Education. Thank you so much.